Okay, so let's start the official part of the new media and contemporary culture series today, the spring edition. Welcome everyone. I'm really happy about the turnout. It's really exciting to have you all here with us. My guest today is Dr. Ruth Page from the University of Birmingham. I think I owe Ruth a lot of thanks for agreeing to be here for the second time, and I'm kind of perhaps a loyal member card for being here with us again. Ruth, thank you very much for this. Today, Ruth's talk is about the trending sound on TikTok. And so just in terms of a short introduction for those who don't know Ruth Page. So she is a reader in applied linguistics at the University of Birmingham. Her books include Narratives Online, Shared Stories and Social Media from 2018 and Stories and Social Media 2012. She's the lead researcher on the ESRC-funded project Influence Stories of Mental Health and Young People. Yeah, Ruth, thank you very much again. The floor is yours now.
Well, thanks very much for having me. Hi, everybody. What I'm going to talk to you about this morning is a piece of work I've been doing for probably the last 6 months or so. And what I'm going to try and present to you is a kind of framework or a way of thinking about trending sounds as a source for storytelling. So I'm going to share my screen and get right into it. I'm just going to put a disclaimer in at the front in that there are some videos embedded into this. And when we were just checking through the slides, some of them seem to autoplay very loudly. So there may be points this morning in which you are slightly deafened. So sorry for that, but you will get wake up calls. So no sleeping. Well, you can sleep if you like, but you'll probably be woken up by some of the music going through. So let me share my screen. And can everybody see that okay? Is that all good?
Yes, we can.
Perfect.
Yes, it's
Marvelous.
working
Just
perfect.
want to check because I could just carry on talking to myself with my slides up, but that would not achieve the end goal. All right, so here we go. You may or may not be familiar with TikTok, but since ByteDance purchased TikTok and its Chinese counterpart, Douyin in 2017, this app has really begun to gather quite a lot of academic attention, partly because of its significant growth. It has over 1 billion users. It's distinctive in that it's camera-first communication. It's also really characterized by music and dance moves and trends and memes, which are what we're going to look at today. It's fascinating because of those short-form videos that are up front and center in this app, which are part of a wider landscape of short-form video forms, also merging alongside Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts and Snapchat. So one of the things that's really fascinating about TikTok is that it's really high editability. The fact that somebody with very little experience of editing video or film can pick up the app and use the resources in the app to then either create their own content or to remix and to recreate other content. So like other forms of social media, TikTok allows you to repost material in terms of sharing, like sharing as a form of distribution. It allows you to do that. You can see on the screen here, it has the repost button. It actually becomes yellow as you see it, as you watch a video on the screen. So it's like attracting you visually to do that. But more interestingly to me, it also allows users to share sounds and filters and templates as invitations to create and recreate content. And that means that really one of the things that has been of significant interest to scholars is the way, excuse me, that the site encourages replication, and specifically in the form of memes. So the research literature to date has really emphasized the way that TikTok is functioning as an imitation culture. So scholars like Darwin are making really quite bold claims like the one that you have on the screen here, saying that TikTok does not prioritize social media practices like commenting or following or messaging, we might contest that, but anyway, that's the claim they make. Instead, it extends the concept of the meme to the entire platform and makes imitation the underlying logic that governs user behavior. That very bold claim, from the point of view of a narrative scholar, which is what I am, I'm interested in storytelling. So, okay, so how does storytelling work in that imitation culture? How do we understand that as a potential for retelling? So retelling is something that I've been interested in for a little while. It's part of the book that I wrote in 2018 about shared stories as a form of retelling as we share and reshare things in social media. So I was really interested in, okay, so how does that work in TikTok, where TikTok just really is putting this practice of imitation and remixing and memes right at the center of things. And what I have come to is to really think about this through the concept of rescripting. So rescripting is a term that was first proposed by Alexandra Georgokopoulou in a paper that she wrote in 2015. And in that, she says that rescripting is a media-enabled practice which involves visually and or verbally manipulating previously circulated stories so as to create alternative stories that are often taken up as humorous, satirical takes on the original story. So there has been some literature that has started to trace how rescripting happens, for example, in Twitter and on YouTube. But as of yet, there has been no attempt, to the best of my knowledge, to really look at rescripting as it works in TikTok with all the possibilities that TikTok offers. And it hasn't really looked at rescripting in terms of, well, what if it's not humorous or satirical? So what are the different pragmatic outcomes and ideological implications of rescripting that go beyond this initial start point that Georgokopoulou was setting out? So these are the questions that I'm grappling with. So firstly, how are the multimodal resources that are found in video memes used for rescripting? So my first relatively simple question. And then what are the different types of rescripting that are used in memetic storytelling? And then what are the ideological implications of the types of rescripting? So kind of going from the very small micro detail through to the large social issues that these kinds of forms of storytelling start to tap into. So to answer the first question first, how are those multimodal resources used? Well, I said this is relatively straightforward. Well, it's not so straightforward because actually video memes are highly complex compositions which are blending many semiotic resources together. So we're going to specifically look at the memes that build on trending sounds in TikTok. So that soundtrack in the first instance might actually include a whole range of things. It might include verbal narration in the lyrics. It might include music. It might include some kind of contextual interpretation in terms of what we know about the life history of a performer. It might have some kind of editing effect applied to it. So typically in TikTok, very often the sound is sped up. It might even be not just the sound, it might include some kind of visual narration as well. It might be a television clip, and we'll see some of these as we go through this morning. It might include a music video. So even the so-called original can be really complex. It might be something that's remixed in the first instance. And then when that's integrated with a TikTok video, you have all of that in your original soundtrack. And then you've got the visual video content, including potentially movement, paralinguistic features, dance moves, the use of the camera, lighting. It might have captions annotated onto the video itself. And there's the description in the TikTok video. And there are filters applied and editing effects. And despite what Darwin says, you get comment threads as well, all of which means you get these very complex ensembles like this. So this is just a screenshot of a particular video meme that used Taylor Swift's song Mastermind when her music was still in TikTok before it got removed. Anyway, here you can see, so I'm using the term annocaps, which is taken from the scholar Robert Hellier's work to describe the captions that are annotated on the top of the video. And then there's visual content that might show events over time. There might be a voiceover with an optional verbal track singing or speaking the events. And then you can see up in the top corner, there's the description and the title. And then there are comments, which are doing lots of work, in fact, in terms of retellings, evaluation, second stories, requests for further events. And most of the research to date has really just focused in on the video. And what I want to argue is you can't do that. And what we really need to do is to think of these a bit like Hymes was originally doing with speech events and saying we need to look at them as composite wholes. So I think back in 2013, Yanis Androstopoulos published a paper where he was talking about Facebook in this context and calling them Facebook wall events. I think we similarly need to work with TikTok data in the same way and look at the whole thing as an interaction, which of course is very complicated and messy, but we'll have a go. So how do we start to make sense of that data? Well, in this piece of research, I have been bringing together the work on memetic studies, which comes from media studies, really based on the seminal work of Schiffman. So in her work, she, in her 2014 book, she sets out these 3 characteristics of the meme. So we need to think about the meme in terms of its content. So literally what is being shown, what's the story content? What is the form that the meme takes? So what are the modalities that are being used? How are visual, oral, aural, editing resources being used? What kind of genres are being used? And then stance. So what is the kind of tone that is being conveyed? Is it serious, funny, or critical? How are the tellers positioning themselves? So this was her framework for looking at memes. And what I have done is to take that and to combine that with the narrative framework that is used in the small stories paradigm. So in the small stories paradigm, stories are understood not as just like individual abstract entities, like the little video. It's always understood that narrative is an interaction between someone and someone else. So narrative is analyzed at 3 levels. So this begins with the work of Bamberg and Giacopoulou, who argued that using positioning theory, we need to look at narrative at 3 levels. So basically what I have done is to take Schiffman's 3 components of the meme and the 3 levels of narrative analysis, put them together. That's what you can see on this slide here. So at level 1, we're looking at the narrative content, the meme content. So how story events and experientiality, so the character's point of view, how is that structured? What are the modalities used to narrate the tale world? And then how is evaluation conveyed through that content and form? We might be quite familiar with that bit of the analysis, if you like. And then at the second level, level 2, asking, well, who are the tellers that are involved here? What identities are taken up? How are the modalities used, both in response memes and in comment threads? Are emojis used? Are the songs used? What happens to the tellership part of it? How are tellers aligning with each other or distancing from each other? So how is stance working in that interactional space? And at the third level, thinking at a macro social level, what is happening ideologically here? So at level 3, what are the ideological claims being made in the meme? How are ideological positions conveyed through those multimodal resources? And how are those memes positioned within dominant or counter narratives? And then I have added a 4th layer, because with rescripting, you're looking really at the comparison between one meme and another meme. We're always making sense of one thing in relation to the thing that has gone before it and which might come after it. And so what I'm trying to ask here, so what has changed? What has changed in relation to the tale world? What has changed in relation to the modality, to the tellership? How has the ideological positioning shifted between one meme and that which comes afterwards? So that's the framework that I have created by bringing these 2 things together and adding the possibility of looking at using that as a systematic way of being able to track through what different memes do. And this is the data that I started looking at, because I clearly am insane. So in total, there were 1,000 videos. I spent a lot of time watching TikTok. And I have moments where I appear to be cool and trendy, and then that disappears really fast because TikTok videos move really, really fast. Anyway, this is the list of all the original, and they're quotes original because many of them are remix sounds. And then basically what I took were a sample of response videos to each of those. That's the list there. But let me tell you how I came to that, which I think is, from a methods point of view, perhaps a little bit more interesting. So I got interested in this because I teach a module called Narratives Across Media. And in that, students bring their own data for analysis, and some of them brought videos that had trending sounds in them. And I looked at them and went, what is this? I have no idea what you're showing me. Tell me what's going on here. And got really intrigued in it. So that began actually in October 2022, where I saw this and, like the intellectual magpie that I am, said, what is this bright, shiny new thing? Let me begin to explore it. So I began with this initial period of kind of ethnographic observation of trending sounds in October 2022. So kind of stuck my head into the world of trending sounds, thought, this is interesting. Let me have a look at some of the original, what's going on here. Then wanted to come back and write about it in a really more systematic way, and realized that that was not a very good way to sample my data. I needed to be more robust about it. So what I did was to then cross-reference the Discover tab, so searching for trending sounds, trending songs, both in TikTok and outside of that with external sources like Spotify and other external lists of the trending sounds and trending songs for 2022 and 2023. I also informally asked small groups of students, tell me what you're looking at, because as you'll know, TikTok's algorithm is personalized to what you watch where you are. So it kind of gets really zoned in on what the things are that you've been searching for and looking at, and sends you more and more of the same. So in order to get a broader picture, I compiled this list, which basically was equally balanced between contemporary popular music, mashups, instrumental music, and television or film clips. What I then did was to take the Web Data Research Assistant, which is an online tool that can just scrape from TikTok examples of hashtags and examples of songs. And I used that to gather 500 videos for each of the 20 songs that I had. And from that, I took 50 of the most viewed videos that were in English language, where there was no indication that the creator was anything other than 18 years old, where the video had been viewed over 250,000 times. So it was clearly oriented as being in the public domain and was downloadable, because I wanted to be really clear that the materials that I were looking at were those that were being oriented to as in the public domain and for public display. And then what I did was to transcribe them. Yeah, I would do this a bit differently now, because TikTok has made a researcher API available just recently in the last couple of months, but that wasn't available when I did this. So what I did, because I'm crazy, is basically transcribe the verbal content in what was annotated on the video, what was in the description, what was in the voiceover, and I took the first 5 comments and transcribed all of that into an Excel spreadsheet with many, many sheets in it. I was also took the metadata for each of those videos, the number of views, likes, comments, and the date uploaded. And then I coded that for the narrative features. So for the presentation of events, and experientiality, and then the rescripting, so where there was a change in the event or the character or the role of the setting, the visual features that you can see there, and anything else that just seemed to be interesting to me when I was looking at the videos. And then, having done all of that, I did a layer of thematic coding over the top, looking at the macro social storylines and the relationships between the trends. Yeah. What I'm going to do is to not present all of that data to you. I'm going to show you 4 case studies that illustrate the 4 types of rescripting that emerged really out of that last phase of thematic coding, that having looked at all the micro detail patterns, when you see what they're doing, both multimodally and ideologically, it seemed to me to fall into 4 categories, which I'm going to take you through next using these 4 examples here. The details are just here to show you. I'll get into it and probably deafen you with some of the music. So hopefully that's given you a flavor of kind of like the theoretical background and the methods. And now here is the framework itself. All right. So the first type of rescripting I want to talk to you about is what I have called interlaced rescripting. So interlaced rescripting occurs when you get variation in the tail world's form and the content, which is establish subtrends, and those different subtrends, they serve interlocking aims, which ultimately support the same ideological position. So you've got 2 subtrends, they're different from each other, but when you put them together, they are interlaced, they're interwoven in order to support the same ideological position. Let me show you what that looks like. Okay, Ah, very good. It hasn't played to deafen you. So I'm going to illustrate this with a mashup, which was from two songs, Moth to a Flame and After Hours. The sounds that are used for this type of rescripting are structured as invoking some kind of predictable pattern. So they either imply or state something like a goal achievement or problem solution pattern. So there's a problem and a resolution, or there's a tension and resolution. And that can be demonstrated through sound, through visual contrast, and through indications of verbal transformation. All right, so that's the sound that gives you this sense of contrast. And I won't sing it again. Karaoke is never good at the best of times, and definitely not on a Friday morning. But that sense of contrast, the transition that's built into the TikTok video, is overlaid in this case with a verbal caption that you can see here. This one became quite unregistered, so that there were as you can see, instructions from other content creators say, use this trending sound now, and this is how you use it. You have this micro plot of transformation, which is to the content creator to show themselves when they are die for you, and then heartless. So one thing and then the other. So there's a change from one state to another state, which in this case is overlaid in the first trend, is overlaid with the visual format of the glow up. So it looks something like this. Which was very much taken up to show the glow ups from younger to older, less attractive to more attractive appearances, often for influencers, for models, and other kinds of high profile. Oh, sorry, this is the annoying thing about PowerPoint, that it keeps playing. So often for these very high profile people, but also laypersons doing this, often elaborating the nature of the die for you and heartless with specific kinds of transformation. So for example, body size, different uses of cosmetics. You can see that it's related with weight loss transformation. Sometimes it's just a pair of images, sometimes it's multiple clips in a temporal before and after sequence. And the kinds of comments that you get in this, you can see that there is both aspirational approval of these kinds of glow up culture, but also kind of a sense in, I want to look like you too. Show us how you do this. So requests for, or advice seeking in the comments to these kinds of videos. So that was the first trend. So the second trend, remember I said that interlaced rescripting is where you get two subtrends that are interlocking with each other. So the second trend that you see in this data is visually different. It's the same sound, but the visual positioning is different, and the type of caption is also different. So the caption that you get is something like a POV narrative that is goal achievement with the transformation specifically related to some kind of gym activity, fitness activity, and that is visually displayed. So no longer the glow up before and after, instead, and showing the person face first. Here it is, the camera is positioned very much like you can see in this example here, where you are look at me doing this, and what you see in the comment threads are a lot of alignment with the instructor, and again, advertising requests that go hand in hand with that. Okay, we don't need to listen to it again. So what I think is happening with these two trends is that you've got the glow ups and you've got the gym instructional videos, both of them promoting the same overarching ideology. Certain kinds of bodies are desirable and they are achievable to you if you work hard to get them. Of course, this is a highly, highly selective form of representation, quite dangerous in many ways, I think, in both cases. Those glow ups, especially, like what's happening between one and the other, all kinds of things that are not represented there, maybe disordered eating, more troubling forms of moving between one body type and another type. So the gym instructions are what appear to be the goal achievement bridge between the before and the after that is left out of the microplot of the glow up. And all of this is ideologically underpinned by a neoliberal economy that not only if you work hard enough, you can get a body like that, but that body like that is also commercially viable. As I said, these are models and influencers. These are being used for product promotion. This is commercially driven as well as ideologically positioned in a certain framework. And if you map out how these occur over time, so this chart is showing you the frequency of those different subtrends. You can see that the glow up dominates, it comes first. And there's another variation of it actually, where the glow up is not just a person on their own, it's then single and then in a relationship. And then you can see that the gym instruction videos come afterwards. So it's kind of set up the goal with the glow up, and then the response, how do you do this, comes afterwards with the gym instructions. All right, so that's interlaced rescripting. Reversed rescripting is the different. It's different because when you get the memetic variations, ideologically, rather than supporting the same goal, this time the trends are in opposition to each other. Like the interlaced rescripting, reversed rescripting uses source sounds that have got inherently in them some kind of predictable pattern with a completed outcome. And it's that completed outcome that allows them to have one possibility and then another possibility that's moving in a different direction. So let me show you an example of this. So this comes from the Bonita trending sound, which was really huge when I was collecting the second set of data, the second phase of observations, and ran actually quite for a long time last year. So this is a clip that comes from Family Guy, and I'm just going to play it to you. Here we go.
Do you or do you not feel bonita?
I feel bonita.
Wonderful, because you look bonita.
Okay, so the original one was actually taken out of TikTok, but you get to hear the two characters, Brian and Chris from Family Guy. In the original, obviously it's not got that green screen behind it. Chris is dressing Brian in a Cinquenera outfit that he's made. And as you can hear, it's got this common comedic irony cued by the incongruity of the dog wearing the dress and the paralinguistic contrast in the tone of voice. But underneath it all, what you have got is this little makeover microplot that is not so very different from, well, I don't know, it is a variation on appearance transformation. So we had the glow up before and after, and here you've got the makeover as a different kind of microplot of appearance transformation. So what you find in the Bonita original trend, the meme format reproduces that dialogue exactly as captions on the screen. And then visually, what you have are multiple frames with two characters, one of whom has been made over and the other one who has been the source of the makeover.
Do you or do you not feel bonita?
I feel bonita.
Wonderful, because you look bonita.
There you go. So the kind of people who are made over include people's pets, children who are making over their fathers, vice versa. And you can see that in the comment threads, there is a lot of almost celebration, positive affect for sure, of the kind of cuteness of this funny trend, this humorous trend.
Do you or do you?
As this trend unfolded, what happened was that there were response and reaction memes to it that said, no, I do not feel bonita. Here are four of them illustrated to you. We have different characters, different events, and different teleological outcomes. So no longer is the makeover successful in terms of there hasn't been a transformation. No, I don't feel bonita. I feel tired, I feel violated, I feel stress eater. And not only are these verbally different, they are visually different as well. So they have different modal formats, so they don't have the before and the after. They show the content creator not feeling bonita.
Do you feel bonita? No, I don't fucking feel bonita. I fucking feel stressita.
Everyone.
Okay, we won't get too far into that, but just to show you that the format of the Bonita reaction memes is visually different as well. It's a single shot in selfie presentation, and the anacaps on it seem to be much more around the problems of appearance. So not being able to decide what to wear, wanting to wear something different, a mother who's not making over their child, getting their child ready for school successfully. And the evaluation and positioning is quite different here. Instead of the kind of cute celebration, it's much more empathetic stance taking around a counter narrative of women's struggles with appearance pressure. Okay, so ideologically, the original trend and the sub-trends are in contrast to each other, whereas in the original trend, feminine power is playful. The male figures who are represented here, so they are sometimes, well, usually you see a woman making over a man, or a dad who's been made over by his child. The male figures wearing makeup are represented as these bumbling entertainers, and beauty norms are used to reinforce gender difference. Whereas in the response memes, you get this kind of resistance or anger towards traditional beauty norms where women's work, either paid work or domestic work, childcare is seen as tiring and it's unattractive, and where fluid gender identities are represented, they are represented as not bonita. There is one content creator who presents themselves as wearing nail paint and knew that people would, as it says here in the quote, question it and look at them differently. When you look at the flow of this over time, what this chart here is showing you is the way that those different original memes, so the original one is the one in orange, and then the others are the different colors of the different response memes. You can see that they coexist with each other actually for quite a long time, but then ultimately one is superseded by the other. So the original cute trend is displaced, particularly by the stress eater meme, which is particularly taken up by young people, and as you can see runs through the summer months. And the reason it does that is because of the contextual use of that meme, and particularly to talk about going back to school and the anxieties of and feeling stressed about going back to college or going back to school. All right, case study 3 is that aggregated rescripting. So we've seen interlaced rescripting where the different subtrends are supporting the same ideological position, reversed rescripting where the ideological outcomes are going in different directions with different kind of formats. In aggregated rescripting, what happens is that you get many alternative ideological positions around a common theme within a single meme, but they don't end up settling on one unified stance that is either held or upheld. Instead, you've got lots of disparate positions around a more complex thread. And I am going to illustrate that with this meme. I'm going to play it to you in a second. Aggregated rescripting typically occurs in trends where the source sound is really ambiguous in its narrative potential and it doesn't present some kind of teleological template. It's highly ambiguous like this. Days seem sometimes as if they'll never end. Okay, so this was the original source sound, which is a mashup of the two songs that you see on the screen here, both of which have also been edited, overlaid on two visuals, which contrast, yes, but is there a narrative transition here? Well, not really. It's suggesting some kind of contrast, but it's really highly ambiguous. And that ambiguity was really exploited in the meme that then emerged from this. So in this meme, the microplots that emerged from it were really highly inferential rather than being explicitly told, like the glow up or the Bonita trends. In this one, you've heard the soundtrack, and the soundtrack was used consistently throughout, but as I'll show you in a minute, there are two visual components to this meme that map onto the two sounds and against the transition that you just heard. And in the second one, the phrase is always, "This is not about X." And then visually, as you'll see in the schematic representation I'll show you in a minute, The narrator is shown in a selfie mode, really closely in close proximity to the camera, usually looking sad, and then the cut shows a change in expression, sometimes indexing irony. Sometimes it might use third perspective when the thing that's being shown is a sports car or a sporting event. So they look a little bit like this. So the phrase is like when the verbal caption includes things like, when my favorite shirt has a hole in it, but I keep it just in case I can sew it back together. And then the next clip says, this is not about clothing. So essentially, these depend on metaphors. Oh, I'm sorry. I've originally had another slide in here that gave you more of the metaphors, but I was worried about running out of time, so I took them all out. Essentially, these are metaphors that are used for people to talk about difficult circumstances that have happened in their life. So in this case, when my favorite shirt has a hole in it, I keep it just in case I can sew it back together. This is not about clothing. This is very much around relationships. So an old relationship, I'm hanging on to my old relationship in case I can fix it, but it's not about relationships. And this kind of in-group discussion, as you can see here in the comment thread, produces similar kinds of discussions where people understand the in-group references that are being made, and use their own metaphors to share similar kinds of experiences. So in the comment threads, you see co-tellership where people are saying, oh, what are you talking about here? I don't understand what you're saying. And then the content creator or other people who are on the comment thread explain what is going on. So for example, when people have examples of the trend where they're not talking about clothing, but they're talking about hair or cosmetics, there were a very, very large number of these talking about using mascara, others that were talking about hair. So here it's saying like, okay, when you cut off the dead ends of your hair, it ends up growing beautifully. Same in life, you cut off toxic people, watch how beautifully you grow. So you can see that there is a narrative interpretation of what's going on here. In other cases, you get what Harvey Sachs called second stories there. So I've just realized I always go back to that 1X, who's literally the only one person I can talk to. You have people who riff off the metaphor with extended metaphors in the captions as well to share their experiences. Oh, I should have left the slide in here. What you can see here is that there are repeated metaphors that are used for the same thing, very often talking about relationships and often talking about sexual relationships in particular. They range right through from fairly light scale discussion of friendships, toxic relationships, right through to sexual abuse and harassment, which is some of the other reasons I took the slides out. And you can see that typically what happens is that women use cosmetics to talk about this, and men, or content creators at least who are representing themselves as men and as women, use different metaphors about this. So women use cosmetics and clothing, and men talk about this in relation to cars and sport. However, when you look across all of the stories in this meme, there's no thematically unifying stance or effective outcomes. So on the one hand, although they're using different metaphors, boys are both giving advice to show restraint and ensuring consent in relationships, and also encouraging activities to score in relationships. And girls, on the other hand, are telling stories of sexual misconduct, and they're setting themselves up and showing themselves in what are called thirst traps, and certainly expressing agency around their own sexual desire. So this kind of a whole range of different positions and ideological positioning around sexual behavior, I think, is reflective of the complexity of the post-feminist landscape. Okay, the last type then, grafted rescripting. So grafted rescripting takes its name from Gall's description of interdiscursive circulation, where she argues that graftings are registers that are indexing one social arena that are then implanted and then grafted onto another context. In this case, what we can see is that there is what happens is that a trend is set up and taken then out of one domain and co-opted, grafted into the purposes of another register. What we see, I'm going to illustrate this through Lizzie McAlpine's song Ceilings. So Ceilings is a trend that was huge last year. Ceilings is from Lizzie McAlpine's song. It interestingly was not her promoting her song through TikTok. What happened was her fan base took the song and started to create memes like this.
But it's over. Then you're driving me home, and it kinda comes out as I get up to go. You kiss me in your car, and it feels like the start of a movie I've seen.
Okay, so what you saw there was highly narrative lyrics that are taken from the chorus of McAlpine's song, which refers to this movie-like moment, a highly tellable moment in the story of the song, where she realizes that the love interest that she's had is over, and she uses the line, "And it feels like a song from a movie I've seen." And that movie-like moment is what gets picked up by the fandom of Lizzie McAlpine, who, as you saw, reenact this with a kind of amateur aesthetic. It's usually filmed as a single clip in third-person camera work, where the creator is running, displaying kind of some kind of effective intensity, as you saw there. It's typically in some kind of romantic cinematic setting, like streets at night, forests, beaches. And as it developed, this creator was not wearing a cottagecore dress, but as the trend began to develop, the content creators increasingly started to wear these romantic movie-like dresses, as you can see here, and there was this increased professionalism in the production of the videos, where dressmakers and influencers were using this to really promote a kind of abstract, effective moment of feminine whimsy. But in response to this, there were two sub-trends which emerged, which both re-scripted and, in Goffman's terms, refooted the original. So in the first version of this, what happened was we began to see the kind of behind the scenes making of the amateur version of the trend. So they were like, let me show you how to do this. But secondly, what I'm really interested in here was how this amateur aesthetic got taken up by companies who then used it to promote their commercial identity. Let me play you this one.
But it's over. Then you're driving me home, and it kinda comes out as I get up to go. You kiss me in your car, and it feels like the start of a movie I've seen.
Okay.
But it's over.
No, don't play again. So what you see in this shift from the amateur fan base to commercial co-option of that trend is, in the original comments, you see a great deal of shared effect. So commenters saying, oh yes, this is exactly how the song feels, and a sense of collective co-creation. So fans saying to each other, we need to do this for real. Can we do this? And then in the commercial versions, you can see praise for the company. You also see a little bit kind of mocking banter going on, but you also see a shift in identities from co-creators in the original to being co-consumers in this second trend, where they're like, oh, let me tell where that shop is, I'm coming. Or we need to go here. And forget our spoons. That was from a restaurant, an ice cream store, where people forgot their spoons. And you can see that over time, the original persists for a long way into this trend, but eventually is supplanted by the companies who take over from it at the end. All right, I need to stop talking immediately. So let me just give you my concluding remarks, that actually when you take these four types of rescripting together, I think you can see how gender ideologies are operating through the stories of TikTok. At a macro level, when we look at this, we can see that there are memes that on the one hand are articulating forms of appearance pressure and heteronormativity. We can see that there are underlying gender representations where on the one hand, glow-ups are promoting, yes, you need to look like this in a particular kind of way, but in other trends, we're seeing negative presentations of motherhood, and fathers are being presented as bumbling entertainers. We can see in the example I showed you from the Matt Black Pagani meme that actually, in terms of sexual relationships, it can be very complex, especially in the post-feminist landscape. And in other cases, like this very last one, we can see actually there are gender politics going on here. Lizzie McAlpin's fan base is predominantly female. The work being done, the emotional labor being done, the creative labor being done by those fans, that then's taken over by companies. And in all of the examples, all of the companies were male actors that you saw in the screens. So these are the references. I'll send you the slides afterwards so that you can take a look at those. And I'm sorry, I've talked for way too long. But you should have told me to stop.
Well, I couldn't have told you that. I was really too much into what you were saying. So, Ruth, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I just a kind of a footnote. The U.S. House of Representatives overwhelmingly passed a bill on Wednesday that would give TikTok's Chinese owner ByteDance about 6 months to divest the U.S. assets or face a ban. It's interesting that the TikTok is facing such a huge problem in the US right now. But that's a footnote about TikTok, and it's ups and downs in different markets around the world. I think India banned TikTok a couple of years ago.
Yeah, so very often that banning is actually quite subtle in terms of it might be banned for certain things and on certain devices, but they don't eradicate the use of the whole app.
Okay.
So even in the UK, for example, you can't have TikTok on government laptops.
Okay.
So, right, there were specific restrictions around it, but the app as a whole is not illegal in the UK.
Okay.
But you can't have it on certain kinds of devices.
Sure. Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, sorry, that was kind of a digression here. Okay, thanks very much, Ruth. Okay, let's open the discussion. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, so let me begin. I have a couple of questions, but I don't want to sort of dominate the discussion. But I will start. Have you looked into the authorship? Because on the one hand, these retellers that adapt a sound, a song. Have you looked into those that do it? The profiles, something like this. How important was it in your research?
In this case, not at all, because what I was really interested in was the sound. Okay. So the way I did the data collection was not by the individual user. The way that I did the data collection was purely based on the sound and the people who were reusing it. So what I was interested in terms of the tellers was I doing anything ethically really dubious, i.e. taking something from somebody whose account appeared to be more oriented towards a private audience. So I wasn't interested in kind of the distribution of who was reusing it, because I was interested in a more kind of abstract way, if you like. The other work that the work that I'm doing right now, we are really interested in who the particular content creators are. We're collecting data in a really different way.
Yeah, this mental research, right?
Yeah. And actually there is another project that I'm doing as well with Alexandra Gigokopoulou. So she and I are kind of collaborating together on what we hope is going to be a book. And what we were looking at were these kind of when stories. So I didn't really talk about that here, but we think I would say there is a shift from shared stories to a shared scenario, where I didn't bring it out here, but anyway, there we are really problematizing the idea that there can be a sense of an author at all, in that the communication is so multi-layered and laminated across multiple voices, not just voices, but gesture, for example. As I'm doing the Love Island gesture here, so there was a meme that's in the Love Island, when you look at the severity of a situation, you step back and look at the severity of the situation. It's not that deep, is it? Which I quote to myself quite often these days. But you know, even the movement, the replication of the movement, that's, you can't, to use the word author doesn't really work when you're kind of reenacting something.
Yeah.
So in there, we're actually trying to say that authorship is a so redundant concept when it comes to TikTok, because there's this, even Goffman's categories for production and participation need to be much more nuanced across the multiple modalities that you're talking about. So both just the words and the tone of voice and the gesture is doing something much, much, much more complex than talking about authorship per se.
Okay. Yeah, I'm asking this question, bearing in mind that, you know, the memetic logics is usually the one that excludes the category of authorship, right? The memes are, in other words, by definition, authorless. But I've been looking into, like in my research, I've been looking into authored memes, trying to figure out how the authorship plays into the semantic, you know, context of a meme. And that's why I'm asking about this, because the TikTokers that adapt certain meme are, you know, they're doing it for various reasons, and I know that the scale of this research didn't really let you, delve into individual people, and that's completely understandable. But Asma, maybe you just kind of pop into somebody's profile and see why is this person doing this sort of meme, sort of kind of imitation or adaptation or
So just to reflect on that really quickly, I think it matters in different ways. So depending on the sound. So for some of these, like Taylor Swift, was clearly using TikTok. If you think of her as an author, as the source of the sound, she was releasing small snippets of her sounds ahead of albums coming out, and using her fan base, who were then showing their, in terms of identity work, that was very much based upon kind of her as an author and or creator, and them as her fans. And then you can see that there are particular types of account that certainly co-opt the visibility that occurs with trends, that you could watch diachronically at certain points. Okay, this becomes so visible, now an influencer will take it. And then you watch them as they take it, and then it proliferates out further. So it kind of more, not in terms of the individual person, but in terms of the type of account, you can see the influencers are doing that for sure. And then companies tend to be the last who hijack it, bless you, for their final
thank you,
their final purpose. So I think, and in some cases the authorship matters in terms of kind of copyright. So the Bonita one I showed you, like the original isn't there when you look at it through the web interface, and you'll know that there has been some what is agreed through terms and conditions of people putting their music into TikTok through certain kinds of, I can't remember what they're called, people who sell other people's music, agents, or the commercial entities who do that. When they don't have the agreement with TikTok, the music disappears, which is why there is no Taylor Swift examples in this anymore.
Okay, yeah, that was it's interesting how the copyrights and the loyalties in terms of music, how because I think it hasn't been resolved, right? Like in generally, like the musicians are sort of trying to fight back
because their fan bases are in TikTok.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but for them it's also kind of a source of big money. All right. Does anybody else have a question now?
Can I have a quick question?
Yeah, go on, Maria. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for the lecture. I was just very curious because you just mentioned the concept of shared scenarios instead of shared stories. Could you briefly elaborate on what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I definitely can. So by a shared scenario, one of the things that I noticed when I looked across this data was that there were a set of stories that are a bit like the one I showed you of the customer at the store, and verbally they tend to be formulated like when this happens, so like when my mom shouts, or when a customer forgets their spoon, or when this happens, and then you see something happen. The shared scenario is typically not an actual particular individual event that is shown. What is shown is a relatable pattern of events or a relatable experience that somebody enacts. So, for example, in the example I showed you there of the company, that wasn't an actual customer, right? That had been set up and staged to show you a recognizable, relatable, in this case, over-exaggerated example of, okay, we all know when this kind of thing happens. And in that case, it was a parody. But the shared scenario is like, it relies on relatability. So it's a relatable experience. The data that Alex and I have been looking at has been looking at family dramas played out through these when stories. You see it to some extent. There are other versions of it as well. Like when I bring my puppy home, and you see like this kind of cute, sleepy little puppy, and then the puppy goes completely manic. So yeah, typically there are recognizable scenarios that are used, that people can recognize it. Okay, oh yeah, I know that happened to me. My puppy was just like that too. Or my mum's just like that too. Or, you know, my story is just like that too. So, but it's not, okay, let me show you what happened when we brought Oscar home from, Oscar is the name of my cockapoo. It's not the individualized, this is what happened when I brought Oscar home from the breeder 5 years ago, and he looked really cute, and we were all fooled, which we were. So it isn't individualized and particularized. It tends to be quite abstract in terms of, it uses lots of abstraction in terms of categories rather than individual people, and uses a templatable event that many people can go, oh yeah, I know when that happens. And so they produces a strong sense of solidarity, either in this is funny, I recognize it, or this is sad, or yeah, you're going through a really hard time. Does that answer your question okay?
Yes, this is very interesting, that because they're divorcing their personality in order to make it more personable for others. So
Absolutely. And also doing it in such a way that they are primarily, I think, tapping into affect rather than event. So what becomes really the carrier of the connection is through the shared emotion in it, not necessarily the exact nature of, oh yeah, I fell out with my mum last night and we had this fight about X. It doesn't happen at that level of disclosure. It's happening at a more abstract emotional level, which carries with it all kinds of implications, I think, for the possibility of support, in-group positioning, and when that spills over into things like mental health, you know, that then presents all kinds of possible benefits, but also potential risk as well.
Yeah, thanks, Ruth, and thanks, Maria, for the question. Really cool, very cool one. Anybody else? No, I'm just looking at the clock. How much time we might take for questions, and I think maybe one or two would be okay. So my question then, if I may, refers to the purely musical aesthetics, right? How does musical aesthetics play into the meme being imitated and co-opted, and all those dimensions you've researched?
In different ways. So I would say it is well, I think it does two things. One is it does something in terms of the evaluation and emotion and the kind of stance and tone, depending on how clearly recognizable and registered the particular sound is. So for example, there's one of the clips that is an instrumental clip. It's called Creepy Violins, and it was used loads during Halloween, and kind of really associated with like a classic horror score, musical scores, you know, really highly indexical, strongly recognizable meaning, if you like, which then can map onto very particularized types of trends that emerge from it. So it kind of can be very narrow if the meaning is highly registered and codified. When it's really less so, when it's broader and more ambiguous, then I think it's tapping into all kinds of different kinds of storytelling communities. So the kind of, I think the ceilings trend really worked because there was something around the sound that was really captivating, and this kind of slightly folky, slightly indie sound, which I think chimes with one of the big demographics in TikTok.
Yeah.
And the slightly whimsical and relatable feeling like, oh yeah, I know what it feels like when a relationship is just over, and oh, was it all like a movie? But that is also highly transposable onto lots of other scenarios, not just the relationship one. So people used it to talk about getting jobs or having success. So the movie-like moment was very transposable across different and here is said dog once again. During lockdown, he mastered door handles, which means nothing is off limits to him. So in answer to your question, I think it does a lot in terms of emotion, and it does a lot in terms of the specificity of the kind of stories that can get told from a particular type of song.
Yeah,
or
because
clip.
I was thinking about, you know, how the you've mentioned the ceilings song, how it sort of contributes to this emotional side to the song, plus the when memed and retold, how it sort of plays into the emotions of the retellers. How about the sounds that were taken away from that, in the sense of a kind of sarcastic or humorous use? Because I think that song is so whimsical that it might be, you know, memed into that humorous direction. Have you seen anything like it, when it was not this sort of serious teenage, love drama, but making fun of the song, maybe making fun of this sort of theme?
Oh, yeah, I didn't see anything where people were making fun of the song. I'm just going to look back at the list of the songs so that I
Yeah, because basically
yeah.
what's interesting is that how the sound meme can be adapted to various contexts, and
Yeah, I'm
meme.
sure there must be some where it does do that. It just didn't happen to show up in
I
the
see.
20 that I stopped at. I think also because I was really looking for things where the stories got told from the songs. So maybe that was there in datum, but because I didn't particularly have a story component in the memes that followed, I didn't not chucked it out, but I didn't then focus on that. What I did see more of was that people were taking something funny and then using it to talk about something serious.
Yeah. Okay.
Much more of
the-
that.
There's this deflecting, strategy, right? Okay, cool. I think we need to stop here. I have a list of questions. But I don't want to sort of no. Maybe somebody else. Maybe does anybody else have any questions?
And please, those of you who've been listening, I was saying to Bart that this work is not published yet. It's like I'm trying these ideas out. So anything that you think, oh, that needs a bit tightening up. What does she mean by that? I'm really open to discussion, ideas, thoughts, and I'm most likely you will know much more about TikTok than I do. So anything further that you want to tell me, or talk about from your context in terms of the things that you're interested in, what it plays out in terms of your local context, I'm really interested to hear.
Yeah. Anybody wanting to comment now or ask a question? Okay, I suppose not now. Okay.
Or I'm either too terrifying or I was completely clear, in which case, both things might be true. If I manage to convey everything clearly, then that's wonderful.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's the answer. That's the answer. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to host you again. And just a brief invitation to another talk, if I may, sort of self-market here. In next month, we have Marcus Maloney from the Coventry University about manosphere in the digital / social media reality. So if you have some time, the April the 11th, pop by everyone. Thank you very much. Ruth, again, many thanks.
You're welcome. Thanks for
I'm
having me, everyone.
I'm looking forward to reading more about your research once you are ready to publish it, or even before. No, that'd be great. At any rate, I wish you a great Friday, great weekend, and this is also to everyone here. Best wishes, and well, see you soon in one world or the other, so online or offline. So take care, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Okie doke. Right. I'm going to stop now.